Okay, and welcome to a video here where I will be explaining. Let me move the mic a little bit closer. Um, Basically, what they call it is what do they call it? More than one thing at once. Parallel universes, and what do they call it? When you exist in multiple realities. Man, right before I was starting the video, I had it at the tip of my tongue. Basically parallel universe is how there's that theory of, oh, there are infinite amounts of universes, and you could basically exist in another universe. And I finally came to a conclusion behind how that works and the reality behind that phenomenon, and explain how it's somewhat true, but not necessarily true to the extent of what most people are led to, be told about what it is. Like, oh, I could exist in 10 other universes right now doing the same thing or whatever it may be. Um, so that ties down to this quote here, where my quote states, nope, I just came up with this quote 20 minutes ago, 30 minutes ago. Um, so I state, nobody believes that nothing can do anything by itself, but the truth is that nothing has already done everything by itself. Okay, so I come up with these quotes that I call holographic poetry. And this is holographic, and it lets you basically understand things in a higher level. It's almost like a map within a map, because when you look deeper on the map, it gives you another map, and then basically potentially, if you look deeper on that next map has the next map, and then that next map has the next map, which is why I call my quotes holographic poetries, because it's almost like a lens. It's like a microscope or binoculars, being able to see things more clearly. Um, so in this top part of the quote, I state, nobody believes that nothing can do anything by itself, which is pretty believable, understandable. Even, I I think everybody's like that. Something can't just do anything by itself. Like, for example, my room isn't going to clean itself, right? That's what that quote means. Is everyone? That's what everybody believes. Nobody believes that nothing can do anything by itself. So nobody believes, oh, that my room isn't going to clean itself. See, nobody believes that. So that's what that is stating and representing. But the truth, here's the pair. This is also a phenomenon of nature's why I needed to bring this up. So, but the truth is, even though we go through nature with the whole mindset of, oh man, my room won't clean itself. Because that ties into nothing can do anything by itself. That's our nature, to believe, oh, nothing can do. But at the same time, whereas nothing can do anything by itself, we are in a strange paradigm, paradox of where it's actually the opposite. Because the truth is actually that nothing has already done everything by itself. So that means that something that has no expectation behind it is doing something by itself. And that's the whole universe. Nothing, because that's what the Big Bang is reaching that point of nothing, because it has to become defined when it can be defined. So this is something that can be defined, because it's being revealed, oh, this is to be defined, can be defined, is definable. But the thing that makes nothing tricky is our vocabulary has that holographic paradox behind it, where it actually goes into almost like a computer type matrix, to where it actually hits another wall or another level, and then another level, and then another level. So the whole paradox behind what I've discovered about, the acronym of nothing, is it's one of those acronyms that hides itself. And when you're dealing with nothing, then you're also under no recollection of nothing. That's why everyone's blind to the phenomenon until you actually take a step back and see, oh, this is actually the phenomenon. It's almost like, dark matter, how it goes to another level where something's there when it doesn't look like there's nothing there, which is the point of nothing. So the thing is that this point of nothing is defined in the matrix and the computer system from our observation, our reality, what we know of what it is, what we expect. So nothing has already done everything by itself. So that's why when you reach that point of nothing, because that's what the Big Bang is when you reach that point of nothing, there is nothing. That's what nothing is defined as, is there to be nothing. So people are reluctant on accepting the fact that there is that nothing, because they feel like everything else has to come out of from somewhere else, which is somewhat true, but not in this scenario, because the matrix creates that border. It creates that wall, that function, that dynamic, that part of the nature, to where that nothing is basically more than what people are realizing. Oh, wow. When you reach that point of nothing, you actually have, because that's what is expected to, you will have reached that point of nothing. So when that point occurs, that's when it should become apparent, okay, well, now nothing can do everything by itself. So when you're seeing the phenomenon of the Big Bang, you're seeing it at its first appearance, the first time anyone's ever known about that dynamic and that reality of that aspect. Like, oh wow, no one knew that was possible. Because how the hell is anyone going to know anything is possible if you don't even exist? You can't know anything's possible if you don't even exist. So anyway, you reach that point of nothing, and what that means is it goes to show it's almost like in the movie The Matrix, how everything's a computer system. Well, everything could be one specific outcome or one specific way, and it doesn't really necessarily even matter why or how. If it were to be, that's what it was, what it was, and that's why everyone's confused of what it is now, because they don't accept, oh well, if I existed in another parallel universe. And that's where we're getting into what a parallel universe is. So the reality is when you reach that point of nothing, that's the point of nothing as you know it, from what you are expected, because everything is based off expectation. So now nothing reveals that is a part of what's expected. If there were any sort of leeway to where we could override that, to where that wasn't necessarily the case, to where there were to be something that would just create the new acronym of where you wouldn't have that definition of nothing. That's where it's critical and imperative to understand that that definition of nothing stands, whereas its nature is to not be have appearance, to not have knowing of. So then that's why no one has that knowing of oh man, there is nothing, because they can't accept that or believe that concept or understand that concept of oh there is nothing, because they always have that concept of that there's always got to be something, because they realize that there's always everything that there is. But that's not the definition and the revelation of the nature. And that also reveals the revelation of parallel universes, of what those are. So that's when you go back to the Big Bang, and then when everyone's arguing, oh, well, there are those parallel universes once you go far enough, or for, basically reach that level, because everyone's always willing to continuously add more levels until that level is, which is a form of infinity. So they believe infinity most of the time, not even knowing that they believe in infinity. So they already accept, oh, you're always going to have this other universe once you reach some new level or expectation, which at that point you believe in infinity, which is the same thing as believing in God. That's what God is the ruler of infinity, to know what infinity is, to be infinite. So he is infinite, because that's the only way to be God, is to be infinite. So he's the only one who can understand. So first of all, mankind doesn't by nature understand infinity, because it's based on the law of mathematics, the law of perspective. When you're dealing with one perspective out of infinite amounts of perspectives outside of his perspective, you will never reach any sort of divisible level of perspectiveness up to his understanding or knowledge. And that's why everyone is so confused and doesn't understand his nature, of where he has that infinite amounts of perspective, which is what confuses everybody about his nature. And that because he has to teach everybody a lesson for everyone's own safety. And this ties down to this is where parallel universes are going to come into this explanation. So parallel universes are somewhat real, but they're withheld and they're held back. And they're held back by nothing, through nothing, because they are nothing. So the only way they can come into anything is through nothing. So when we go back to nothing, we already are revealed where nothing begins. So we already know what nothing is. So by our knowings, only by what we know of, and by what we can see in front of us, is all that we know that there is. But we also can hold on to language itself to guide us to these aspects of, like, God being a part of definition of language, to where he is a part of that nature, and he is almost the opposite of nothing, everything and nothing. So both are equally confused and unnoticed, because he's that type of person to where, well, just like if you see somebody who has great craftiness or skill, you kind of are in disbelief and you may question, oh man, I don't believe that someone could do that, or there has to be some other explanation behind what this person is claiming that they did. Like, let's say, for example, somebody built a castle by themselves. Most people may doubt, like, oh, I don't believe that he did that by himself. And that's a part of man's nature, is to not understand what somebody can do by their own self. And that's God's nature. By his own self, he can do anything, because that's his nature, is to be continuous, to rule over nothing. So that's where it began, where it came out of nothing. So this is where we're getting into altered dimensions. So when we get into altered dimensions, what we're dealing with is basically infinite amounts of combinations to the dice. So let's just say that our universe that we're in is this combination, and we're just zooming in so everybody can perceive it. So we're looking at the combination that we're on right here. Boom. That's just the combination it is, as it exists, the way it exists. And then you reach that. That's what that other potential combination of the dice is nothing. Because it isn't nothing unless it's actually on that dice, if that's what it is. So until it's actually on that dice or in existence, then it's not real. It's just imagination. But it's still a possibility. That's what altered states of what was I saying? Parallel universes are. That's what parallel universes are. So when you get into a parallel universe, you're going to be dealing with what it potentially could have been if some other circumstance were to be in that existence. So everybody can come up with infinite amounts of different simulations or circumstances. Infinite, because you can always just change one thing or add another or take it one thing away. So it's infinite. That's what the parallel universes is. Parallel universe is nothing more than a probability, than a possibility, something that could be if it were to be in that. So anything could potentially be on that perceived combination or perceived universe or parallel universe. Because we're in a parallel universe from what people are being confused by, but it's not even necessarily a parallel universe. It's just we're in a universe. Because when you start talking about parallel universes, you're talking about universes that are imaginative, where there's no solid proof. Anybody can create a parallel universe because it's just creating your own idea. So there are infinite amounts of combinations to the dice. But the only combination of the dice that matters is the combination of the dice that it's actually on. Or if we know that, it's going to go to that combination, but now you're dealing with perplexity beyond that anybody can explain. How can anybody say that this universe is going to roll onto this other parallel universe when you have infinite amounts of parallel universes that could potentially land on? So now, basically, anybody's saying, hey, this parallel universe is going to go onto this parallel universe is stating, that this probability that will occur is 1 out of infinite, but this 1 out of the infinite occurrences that will occur is the 1 out of the infinite occurrences that will occur. So nobody can just say, this is going to be the 1 out of infinite occurrences that are going to occur. That's why that doesn't exist. It's not real, because it's not expected. It's improbable. It's improbabilistic for somebody to just say, hey, this 1 out of infinite amounts of possibilities or realities is going to be what's going to exist. Nobody knows what universe is going to exist unless it's that universe that exists at that moment, at that time, at that knowing. Or if there's any sort of additional information added on. But when you reach that point, you always reach that point of nothing where there's no additional information to be added on, because there's nothing else to add on or that can be added on. Like, for example, like on your desk in front of you, like there's nothing else to be added on once it's at that state of what it is. Like, if you only got one lighter on your desk, You're never going to reach that point where all of a sudden, just randomly, sporadically, there's 20 lighters on your desk that just out of nowhere are just there, because that's entering into altered parallel universes where, yeah, it's one out of infinite ways that it could be simulated or occur or exist, but now the only way that it could exist is one out of infinite amounts of way, which it cancels out unless it is as is. So the only universe, or parallel universe, if you want to call it that exists is the one that you're in right now, that you know of. So what people don't understand is that anybody can be called into a universe, or the universe. So as far as we know, let's just call this universe the universe. So that's what we know of. Oh, you can be called into the universe. All right. Now, that's where everybody freaks out. Well, what happens after death? Well, you're basically faced with an experience where you're called out of the universe. Everyone is going to be called out of the universe, because that's our nature, to be called out of the universe. But by our nature of our universe, that's under its rulership, how it's ruled to exist, is we can be called into the universe. Who do you think calls anything or everything into the universe or into existence? God himself. So he will do it himself. That's what the great day of judgment is. When he revives everybody from the dead, he will do it himself. Because that's how the universe is in operation, like a computer system. Because he rules over. He has that ability. Well, and he has the option to rule you back into the universe or not. I mean, he could rule you into a parallel universe. That's what my definition, what I believe hell is he'll probably, people that need to be punished on the great day of judgment. What happens if people get sentenced on a judgment or go to court? They go into a jail. Why do you think jail sounds like hell? Because hell/jail are almost the same thing holographically. It's just being called to a parallel universe. So when God sends people to hell, he will call them into parallel universes. Maybe not a parallel universe, because it's probably all connected as one, but it's still another universe to another person, because it's going to be a form of punishment on the great day of judgment, where he has to punish people to teach them to be, good, to not be harmful, to not be wild and fucking destructive and destroy things. So it depends on each person. Everyone's going to get ruled back into their own hell or reality or parallel universe. Because let's say that your existence is your own parallel universe, my existence is my own parallel universe, but together, when you have your own parallel universe, I have my own parallel universe, we are connected into one universe. So your parallel universe connects into the universe, and my parallel universe connects into the universe, creating the universe itself. So your parallel universe, my parallel universe connect into the universe. So what that means is, when he calls everybody back into the universe, because what happens is when you don't exist. If you don't exist, you're not in the universe, because the only way that we know to exist is if you're in the universe. So all we know is if you don't exist, you are not in the universe. It doesn't mean that you're not a part of the universe, because you're probably still there, but you are not in the universe, straight up. But you can be called back into the universe. But remember, the only way anybody is called into the universe is if there's a reason, if it's real, there's if there's any possible way. So there isn't going to be any possible way for anybody to be ruled back into the universe unless he doesn't recreate everything. So first and foremost, that's what he does best, because he can do anything. So he'll have to recreate everybody. And from that point, that's when he'll have to set everybody straight, because at that point, everyone's going to learn their lesson. But even though everyone learns their lesson when they've done wrong, doesn't mean that there won't be punishment. So at that point, okay, everyone learned their lesson, but now we're going to have to deal with punishment. Because if we didn't have to go around this whole paradigm of our parallel universes colliding, and that's what the problem was, is not respecting each other's own parallel universes and being harmful, to where he can't allow it, because that's the way the universe works. Is if somebody wants something to exist, it will exist. And that can be a form of slavery, because if somebody wants to enslave somebody, then it has to exist, because that's how the universe is wired up and processes. And that's why he's teaching everybody a lesson of, we don't operate in a form of slavery, because it's not God's nature to allow that. He does not allow parallel universes going against each other's parallel universes and then one ruling over another parallel universe. He does not operate like that. And that's his biggest thing. That's why this is the very first thing everyone first experienced and started learning, is to not go against the principle of nature of, being wild, crazy, destructive, and harmful, basically a terrorist. And when you deal with a large enough population with millions and billions of people, you're going to have that parallel universe where somebody taps into that and wants to experience it. And remember, their parallel universe and your parallel universe connect together into the universe, because everybody can rule in and out of things into the universe as one. So when everyone is ruling in things into the universe that are harmful, that's where he begins to crash. He crashed the party. Why do you think the party's all crashed? And everyone's like, man, this is depressing. It looks like everything's going to end. Nothing's going to matter when everybody dies. The party's crashed. Why do you think the party's crashes? Because that's when he draws the line, and he's going to crash the party. Is when he's got to set the record straight and teach people a lesson and make sure everybody understands and believes the same thing. Because the only way anything's ever going to change is if everybody believes and learns and, changes off of, like, the punishment, basically. So when you're dealing with these parallel universes, it's almost complete nonsense, because anybody can just make up any fucking random parallel universe, but that doesn't fucking matter if they think it are to be relatively useful. To them, maybe it is, but in reality, it's no more useful than coming up with some fucking stupid parallel universe or idea like, oh, that there is fucking purple cows in a farm over in Europe or something, which may or may not be true. But even if there are purple fucking cows over in Europe, that doesn't fucking change anything. That doesn't even fucking matter, which is what most people don't understand about their concept. Because to them, they are like, oh, well, that does matter. But to most other people, they're looking at it like a purple fucking cow. Like, that shit don't matter. Why the fuck would that matter if there's a purple cow over in fucking Europe? But to one individual, it may matter. Oh, well, it does matter because this matters, that matters. So whatever it is they may see can potentially always matter for them, but no one else may ever understand what their parallel universe is, or even the benefit of it, which is what most people are trying to claim, that their parallel universe is beneficial for. Oh, well, over in this parallel universe, this is beneficial. Over in this parallel universe, this is beneficial. And that's just their concept. That's just their theory. But in reality, it's no different than fucking somebody saying, oh, there's a parallel universe with the fucking purple goddamn cow over in Europe. That doesn't change anything because it doesn't exist, and even if it did exist, then you would only have to deal with that reality at that time if it existed. So it's pointless to start getting all confused and into all these deep fucking parallel universes of, oh, well, this universe exists over there, because it don't matter until it's rolled on the dice if it's in the universe. If it's not in the universe, it doesn't fucking matter. It doesn't mean that it's not possible or that there's not that parallel universe and that potential combination out of the infinite combinations that still exist. The only thing that matters is if it's in the universe. If it is not in the universe, it doesn't fucking matter. So what people are also not understanding is we can see everything in the universe because that's our nature. Is if we look out, we see what we're looking at. So when we look out and we see what we're looking at, we see exactly what I was just explaining. I almost forgot what I was just saying. But that's what everybody has to just realize, where there's a point of nothing, alright? If it doesn't exist, if it's not in the universe, then it doesn't exist. It doesn't mean that it's not probabilistic and possible, because everything is probabilistic and possible, because we've already seen 1 out of infinite already occur. So no matter what concept or theory anybody comes up with, it doesn't make it stupid or not possible or possible or whatever. It's just always still 1 out of infinite. No matter what your fucking hypothesis or theory may be, if it doesn't exist, as soon as you put out your hypothesis or theory, it's only chance of reality, if it doesn't exist, is still 1 out of infinity until it exists, unless it exists. So if something doesn't exist, its chances of existing are 1 out of infinity until if it are to exist. Then you can look at that probability. You can still learn a lot of information off that obverse and the negative of that probability of 1 out of infinite not existent, because the chances of something existing 1 out of infinite, chances of nothing existing 1 out of infinite, they cancel each other out. So it's a phenomenon of nature. So the thing about these parallel universes that everybody needs to understand is they don't exist. If they are not in the universe, it doesn't exist. Alright, so guess what? If we find out and we know of, oh, there is something outside of the universe, that now becomes a part of the universe, because that would make that the universe, because we're always inside the universe. That would make the universe, it would make that there's something inside of the universe, So that's more than the universe. So the only thing that ever exists is if it's in the universe. So if you reach another point where something else is inside of the universe, it's still just inside the universe. You don't go inside. It's always just inside the universe. It's not inside. That's where everyone's all fucking confused because now when you're saying it's inside, you're coming up with combinations of the dice, which let's say on a standard game of craps, there's 1 out of 36 ways to roll the dice. So if you roll those dice, it's just going to be 1 out of 36. Alright, so when you start coming up with your own parallel universes, you're just adding on another dice combination. But the only thing you're not realizing is that the dice combination you're adding on is still 1 out of infinite more that are going to be added on and that are still being added on. So you're not adding on anything useful if it doesn't exist. So the only thing that matters is when it exists or if it exists. That's where everybody is being stupid. Alright, so what we know exists is that you can be called into the universe. Because that's how we exist. We got called into the universe. Alright, so when we die, as far as we know of, we are no longer in the universe. So by our nature of the operation of our universe, it can call you into the universe. There just has to be a reason or purpose or an explanation. It has to make sense. So when you were called into the universe, your mother created you. It's the only way it can make sense. Okay, so the only way you're going to be called back into the universe is if you're recreated. It doesn't matter how you get recreated. Your mom don't need to recreate you. Why would your mom need to recreate you if she needs to be recreated? So it doesn't need to be your mom that recreates you. The point of the matter is you have to be recreated. And we already know that if there's a useful enough reason, you can be recreated or called in. So we know that there is a God. So if he wants to recreate you, he could easily, because that's his nature. He can do anything. So that's my guess of what's going to happen when everybody gets called back into the universe. Is he'll recreate everybody because he can do anything, because that's just what he's always been able to do it. And then he's going to set the record straight, and he's going to punish everybody that was running around like a terrorist, so that the order of the universe starts working in a way where it's not destructive. Because he's not going to be a doctor. Oh, Johnny's going into the hospital, got blown up by a frag grenade, stitching everybody's arm back on every freaking 1 minute when the population is 1 trillion gazillion people, right? He can't just be sitting there stitching people up every freaking 1 second. That's why the order of the universe has to change and understand that concept of, hey, I'm not going to be sitting here recreating shit for everybody to just destroy it. So that's why it's going to the great day of judgment where he's going to say, hey, your nature is destructive. We're not going to be able to allow that. So this is what you need to learn. And once you learn this, the universe will be able to manifest and be infinite, continuous, because it won't destroy itself. Because that's mankind's nature, is to keep destroying itself. So that's what the great day of judgment is. He's basically saying, okay, everybody's done destroying yourselves finally. Now, for this to never happen again, now everyone's going to know, okay, everybody destroys himself, and now everybody agrees, oh, I don't want to destroy myself. How do I change this? How do I fix this? He's going to say, well, you need to learn this, you need to learn that. And once everybody, that's what going to hell is. Like, let's say serial killers. He's going to say, well, you need to learn this. So whatever it is that's going to make it fair for that person to have learned what they were, destroying the universe with, to where they finally change their mentality to where they don't want to do that, because it's based on free will, to where nobody wants to do that. So there's going to come a point when everybody receives that. That's the point of receiving your punishment, is where you're saying, oh, I don't want to do that. I'm not going to do that. That's the whole point of everybody needing to go through judgment, be punished, is They got to learn, hey, you're not going to do that. You don't want to do that. Why? Because there's going to be punishment. Because he can't create everything for it to just be destroyed, be destroyed, be destroyed. And that's where he begins. That's the very first thing he's teaching and showing everybody is, I am not creating everything for you people to just go destroy it. He starts on a small batch. So now everybody's going to learn their lesson. Not everybody's going to get punished, because if he judges you and sees, okay, you weren't led astray and you weren't tricked and you weren't causing harm, because it's based on what has happened. And so that's where parallel universes come in. That's where this whole video originated from, where I was going to starting this video, is he knows all the parallel universes of where you could have existed, how you could have existed, and what you could have done when you existed by, if your mom was one other different person, or if your house was one other house away. See, he can simulate all those infinite parallel universes. So they exist. That's what everybody is confused with. They exist, but they're not real. The only reason they exist is because it's a possibility and it's an option, and it's a configuration that could be set up in that way. So he knows every combination that it could potentially be. He knows all parallel universes. Okay? And that's why he had to punish everybody, is because in all the different infinite amounts of parallel universes that we went into a reality with, he had to take the law of averages, was where he takes the good and the bad and he weighs it out to where it weighs out to be the most expected in the long run, because that's all that matters. That's why when you see all this destruction, everyone thinks it's so bad and that God shouldn't allow it to exist, but it's through the law of averages that it was reduced to its lowest amount of what we had to go through and witness, to where that's what makes it beneficial. Is because, well, if it were to be any other way, it would be worse, because it always has to go down to what is as expected. So that's just the way nature is. When you get into an argument, it's just the way it is. Damage is going to get done. There's going to be damage. So when you're dealing with an individual, God and Lucifer, and you're dealing with the fight, there is going to be damage and there's going to be consequences. And when you're dealing with God having to weigh out the consequences of the most profitable, because in these other parallel universes, some of the other parallel universes that could have existed, and which is why he didn't want the other parallel universes to exist, the universe is like a game of chess almost, and it's like a game of a hostage situation. So the way Lucifer works is he's taking everybody hostage, because that's how the universe works, is it grants free will. As long as there's nothing that ties back to you, there's no evidence. It's just like a criminal. Well, if there's no evidence that you did anything, then there's nothing that can be done against you. You're blameless. Now, that's where the whole thing about Lucifer and God comes in, is because Lucifer is crafty, so he's basically like a super criminal. He has that ability to cover up his crimes to where nobody will know about what he did. All right, so that's a form of evil, because it's a form of hostage. Because that's why they're taking somebody hostage. Is like, oh, okay, I have this person hostage. Now you owe me, since you didn't notice that I was going to be able to take this person under harm. So the thing is that's how Lucifer works, is nobody notices that he's taking everything hostage, destroying everything. And no one was supposed to know, because he's a criminal. He was supposed to, because God works in a way where he doesn't get in people's business, because that's the law of nature, of the universe, of nature, is to where you don't infringe on people's privacy or business. So when other people's business or other people's business between other people, God won't get in between that circumstance, which is what creates that parallel or those parallel realities, because there are infinite amounts of parallel realities. So he doesn't get into other people's business. So when Lucifer is basically running around like on a chessboard, collecting more hostages, more hostages, more hostages, because if he can collect enough pieces, he'll basically have enough points. And when you have enough points, then you basically win. You get what you want. You can do what you want. So that's what he was going after, is trying to get enough points, enough hostages. And that's, the universe allows for that because it's nature. Well, if there's nothing that points back to you and nobody knows about it, then you're not going to be in trouble. And remember, God works in a way where he's not going to take sides on one person or another. When he created the universe to have that reality, that nature of, you know what, it's everybody's right to do what they want, and I won't, even though, because that's his nature, even though he knows everything that's going on, he will not invade in your business, because it's everybody's own privacy of that's your business, and then it's none of his business. That's his principality of nature, is to not get involved with other people's business if they so choose that. And that's the problem with when somebody gets into a hostage situation, is there's some sort of circumstance that are to occur where, you know, it wasn't any of his business. And that's why he was there. That hostages, they're like, oh, I was willing to pay the price or take the consequences. Kind of like signing a loan. It's like, okay, that's where God had to teach I think it comes down to the profession and reality of business. So when Lucifer, you know, does business with another person, and, you know, contracts are made, you know, then you get into legal rights of, you know, your business and his business and what's signed and not signed. And then when somebody signs, oh, well, that they're going to owe somebody, then now the other party can't come in between until it becomes part of their business, and until there's a reason that it's part of it. Like right now, how I'm explaining the dynamic, how now it's becoming everybody's business because now you know about it. Because if nobody knows about it, nobody knows about it. It doesn't exist, unless it only exists to everyone that knows that it exists. So the thing is, if we were in these other parallel universes, what would make it more harmful is when Lucifer's taken more hostages, it would go on longer and longer and longer, potentially forever, infinitely. And that's why we had to go down to this circumstance, to where we finally went so far out of our way to finally find out about this reality of nature. You know, people being able to put each other into debt and take people hostage. Because, you know, the way it works is Lucifer's getting as many contracts. That's why you always hear the folk tales and the stories of, oh, Lucifer stealing people's souls. And what that means is to where the other person owes him infinite amounts of debt. And that's basically signing a loan, and then they're agreeing that they'll pay them back anything that they want. So that's what Lucifer gets everybody to do. Make a deal. Hey, let's make a deal, but in return, you have to do everything and anything that I want. That's what it means to sell your souls. If somebody says, okay, I'll do business with you, but you're going to have to do everything I want and anything I want. That's selling your soul. So when somebody sells their soul to Lucifer, remember, when somebody sells their soul, they don't feel like they're selling their soul. It goes over their head. They don't think it's a big deal. Oh, yeah, I'll do anything you want. What do you need? Because most of the time, if somebody is asking for help, and then someone says, "Oh yeah, yeah," and if they're going to do them a favor, like if the other person's going to do them a favor, most people are redundant and reluctant and real quick to just say, "Oh yeah, I'll do anything you want. You help me out. What do you want?" And then most of the time, when somebody says that, they don't expect it to be very much. They just but most of the time, whenever they're saying, "Oh yeah, I'll do anything you want," that's still when they're still proposing an offer, and most of the time it's a reasonable offer, and everybody goes along with it. But when people are going along with the deal by the devil, they already know the deal. It's like, okay, well, you do exactly this, and then I'll do exactly this. That's where it's different when somebody does business with the devils. They know, oh, I'll do exactly that. They know. It's not an offering. It's not being debated. It's a knowing. Oh, I'll do anything and everything. So there is no shortcutting it, and that's where everybody gets in trouble. Is if they make that deal. Oh yeah, I'll do anything you want. They know that circumstance because that's the problem. They know that circumstance because that's the whole point that they're making that business agreement. Is I'll do exactly this, but you have to do exactly this. And then both parties know, okay, well, this is exactly what I'm expecting. This is exactly what I'm expecting. I'm not being deluded or tricked by this, and that's where it's a big problem. It's because now it's nobody's business but between those two individuals. Because now it doesn't matter. God can't get involved in between a deal when something is under a circumstance of that magnitude where, okay, well, this individual knows that that's exactly what's expected. Well, this individual knows that's exactly what's expected. Well, when both people know that's exactly what's expected, then nothing can change what's expected out of that expected. So what's expected out of, okay, you got to do everything. They could become a servant of the devil or a hostage of the devil, whatever it may be. Whatever it comes down to. So the way that works is now when he's got his hostage, God can't, because when you're getting into these altered realities, what you're dealing with is Lucifer filling up a dungeon and putting people on torture devices and knowing that God can't intervene because it's none of his business because that's what they owe him. Because the problem with God intervening with this of having his dungeon with 1 billion people and he's torturing all of them is that Lucifer knew exactly what was expected, and the person that was tricked, being put into debt, knew exactly what was expected. So since they both knew exactly what was expected, nothing will ever change that circumstance, that agreement, that deal. And that's what Lucifer banks off of. He knows, oh, nothing will ever change this circumstance because that's what was agreed upon. And then he knows that that's how God operates. Oh, I won't. Because that's by his, he swears to, like, let's just say that God is a person. Like, that's just his nature. He swears to God. He will not invade on anybody's privacy or anybody's business that is not his own business. And unfortunately, that is a part of nature where you can't be an Indian giver. I'm not trying to be racist when I say that. I know it's a term to where when somebody gives something to somebody and then tries to take it back, because that's not a part of nature, is what he allows. He doesn't allow for somebody to give something and then just take it back, because that's not good for nature to just take something back. So, yeah, when two people agree on something and they go with it, that's their business. If there were a circumstance to where God can get involved in between that agreement, he would. But as soon as it reaches that point to where, everybody knows exactly what's expected, and that's exactly what's expected, to where you're basically agreeing that God can't get involved with your business, and that's the point of doing that sort of business behind His back. Is you're basically people that are doing these deals behind God's back. And remember, we're saying that this is a simulation and an altered universe. You know, um, is what was I going to say? Oh man, I'm getting confused. Yeah, in these altered universes, these people are getting tricked in these circumstances, and it doesn't matter how or what way. It's just a matter of that there are infinite amounts of universes that this breaks down to in ways that it can happen or would have happened. So this was the only reality that we could collide with to where it would break the chain to where it was no longer continuous. This was the only link to what was fair, to what God was able to mathematically, probabilistically work in our favor. So now it's different. Now we're dealing with a different circumstance, because the problem with a crime in progress is normally that nobody knows about it. So if nobody knows about the crime, which is the problem with why we're in this altered or universe that we are now, is that in the altered parallel universes that this simulation would have occurred, it would have been prolonged or potentially gone on endlessly forever. So we're looking at the shortest amount of time to have to deal with God not getting involved with our business when it becomes a serious matter. So now you got all these people, because it was supposed to be endless, because that's where Lucifer would have been able to collect his profit or reward, is if he would have endlessly of avoided detection and remained unnoticed and continually of tricked people into agreement. So people would have continually of went into agreement with them and said, "Oh, I agree, I agree, I agree, I agree." Then that's the problem. But now that we're coming down to the nature of where I can explain, like, hey, don't agree with Lucifer here because it's more serious than everyone's understanding. Now we're dealing with everybody knows what's going on, because remember, before this was all happening, everybody's business is their own business. So when everybody's out doing their own business, no one knows about it. No one fucking knows that anything happened to them. Well, I didn't even fucking know anything happened to him. But I was minding my own business. Okay? Now, the thing is, now when everybody knows about it, see, in the other simulations, yeah, the same thing occurs. People are starting to realize, hey, this is occurring. People know about it. But God still isn't going to invade on people's privacy if there isn't a reason, or if he's going to invade in somebody's privacy going against their will. So basically, if there wasn't any sort of evidence left behind that would have made sense to link back to, like, some regular person would have been able to know about, then it's never expected to exist. So he's got to be fair. So if it's not expected to have never been known, he's got to play fair, even though he knows, because that's just his nature. He knows he's got to be fair. It's like, if it was never expected to have been known, then he has to work with that framework of reality. Hey, it was never expected to have been known, because that's unfairly going against somebody, because he unfairly knows everything already. So anyway, that's how he works. So if there's any sort of evidence, that's what he was looking for. So now we're in a reality where there's evidence that is finally being brought to everybody's attention and to his attention. And that was the biggest problem with the other realities, is the evidence wasn't being brought to his attention Why do you think the evidence wasn't being brought to his attention in the other parallel universes, altered realities? It's because Lucifer was covering up his tracks too well to where nobody noticed his work. It's just like a criminal dumping a dead body out in the forest. Nobody fucking noticed. Nobody knows anything. Same with Lucifer. Nobody fucking noticed. Nobody drew attention to it. But now, the alarm is going off. I'm drawing attention to what is finally going on. And now it's going to be able to become a part of God's business because we know the details. Like, hey, we got the fingerprint. So that's all he needs. Oh, well, do we have fingerprints? Do we have an identity? Do we know what's expected? If nobody knows what's expected, then what the fuck are we going to do? So nobody knows what's expected. He can't ever do shit until somebody says, "Oh, I know what's expected. It was Lucifer. Lucifer did that." So now everyone's all pointing at Lucifer. Hey, it was Lucifer. It was Lucifer. We got evidence. It was Lucifer. Now God's looking at the evidence. He's like, okay, well, let me see if it exists. Let's see if it happened. Because remember, if it doesn't exist and if it didn't happen, then it doesn't matter. He isn't going to base anything off that altered. You could be a fucking Hannibal Lecter in one of your parallel realities, and that doesn't fucking matter. Because it doesn't exist. It didn't happen. The only thing that matters is what has happened or it is real that exists right now. So, and that goes both ways. You could have been Hannibal Lecter. You could have been the fucking Prince of Persia, the fucking hero of the world. God knows. That don't matter. Now that everyone's all pointing, hey, we're bringing it to his attention. We got the fingerprint. We're telling him, yeah, we know what happened. We know what happened. We know who it is. We know what's going on. Now he can get involved. Now he can be like, oh, okay, now this is part of my business because they have evidence. They know about it. They're telling me about it. All right, so that's all he was waiting for, is if somebody was able to tell him anything about it. Did anybody tell him anything about it in those altered parallel universes? Not soon enough, or never. Probably most likely, and a lot of them not soon enough, because I'm sure he's most concerned about finding out soon enough. So now it's being brought to his attention like, hey, we know this is Lucifer. We saw him do it. We know he did it. Now, we just need to have him judged and tried. And what do you think Judgment Day is? Is everyone call him out like, hey, this was Lucifer. This was Lucifer. So now he can get involved in his business. Because now God's going to go looking at him, knocking on his door, what he's hiding. Because remember, what happens behind closed doors stays behind closed doors. So what's his business is his business. But as soon as now it's his business because everybody told him about it. Now he knows about it. And he didn't unfairly know about it because he only unfairly knows about it is if nobody else knows about it. And then he's the only one who knows about it. So now he unfairly knows about it. So now that everybody else knows about it and everybody is all he needs is a little tiny bit of evidence of saying, hey, this is this. And he can react and he can intervene and make it his business. So the problem with those other altered universes and parallel universes is that no one ever fucking was able to give him any notice or no one had any idea. No one had any fucking idea. And that's why that is not real. That's why it didn't exist like that. Is because he wanted it to exist in this reality to where it was brought to his attention to where he was told like, hey, we got evidence so Lucifer's putting in people into debt and he's trying to ransom everybody. Now he can go knock, 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 into game, punish his ass, game over. So that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with good versus evil. And some people will argue that good and evil don't exist, but it comes down to that process of the universe and the way that the universe operates, where good and evil can exist and do exist. It's just a matter of how you understand it or believe it, and understand that good or evil is the same thing, and it's a representation of harm or helpfulness, healing. So you can be harmless or harmful, you know, helpful or unhelpful. That's good and evil. So there's branches and different areas of good and evil that all exist. So that's where everyone's so confused about good and evil, is there are different branches of it. There's not just one type of good. There's not just one type of evil. There's just different types of good, different types of evil. So yeah, now that it's finally being brought to God's attention, remember, God's the type of person, he does everything his own self. And if it wasn't for him doing everything his own self, nothing would fucking exist. Because he's the only person who knows how to do everything. Okay? And this is how he deals with. He knew this was going to happen. He was waiting. So I'm going to tell you guys the way this is going to play out. The way this is going to play out is that Lucifer was going to try to collect infinite amounts of ransom off of the Creator, off of ignorance, because ignorance creates debt, where you didn't notice something, because if you don't notice something, then you owe somebody. So Lucifer was trying to argue, hey, you're in debt, you didn't notice this, you owe me. But now the Creator is proving him the opposite. You didn't think I noticed this, but I did notice this. I chose to handle this in a different situation, because now I can fairly get involved with your business without unfairly doing it, where no one else knew about it. So now everyone else knows about it, and everyone's all saying, hey, this is what's happening. He can get involved. And now it's going to be the opposite. Now that God isn't going to be able to get involved in Lucifer's business, because that's his right. Because if he has evidence, and if he can prove something, he will do anything. That's how he works. If there's evidence, and if he can prove it, he will do anything. Alright? But if it's fair, if it's unfairly, see, by nature it's unfair, because he already knows everything. So why would he go against what he knew that somebody was going to do? So he isn't going to go behind that closed wall only until there's evidence, or if there's a blood trail. If there's a blood trail, boom, all of a sudden now he can follow it and figure something out. But it's, when everything is happening, you're dealing with the criminal, because remember, the more crafty and skillful that a criminal is, you're never going to see any trace of anything. Now, one could argue, well, God has godlike powers. He can get a trace on any little tiny thing. Yeah, he could, but it would most likely be unfairly tapping into other parallel universes of knowledge that he knows of, and not based on the reality that's in existence to right there at that magnitude. Maybe just based on certain circumstances, it doesn't mean it wouldn't be possible, but it has to be fair. So when everybody is finally saying, hey, we see it, we got evidence, we know what you need to look into, get this guy, now he can go knocking on the door and say, hey, you need to get into the courtroom, because we're about to punish you for all your wrongdoings, because now it's my business. Because it became my business as soon as it became real and it was able to be proven. So it became real, and we're able to prove it, go into the courtroom, gonna be sentenced, period. Now, one may argue, well, why isn't he doing it right away? Because that's the way criminals work. It takes a while before they get busted. Okay? The way the courtroom works is they like to build a profile and a case as strong as they can possibly build a case so that there's not one shadow of a doubt. So the creator's just building a case against him at this point. He's just making sure that he can prove the case without a shadow of a doubt, 100%. So he's just letting the evidence, because it's already so bad to where he's doing the opposite. Lucifer wanted to make everything as bad as he possibly could. Well, now the he's like, all right, fine, I'm going to make everything as bad as I can. Since you wanted to do that to us and me, I'm going to do the same thing. So that's worse for Lucifer is I'm just going to keep reeling in and racking up more evidence against you. Because now, more and more evidence that he keeps piling up on him, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse and worse. That's why, you know what? If God wanted to be a nice person and not get him into more trouble, he could just come down here and fix it right away. But he is so mad, and he's going to punish Lucifer so badly for going behind his back and starting this war that he's just going to sit there getting more and more continuous, endless amounts of evidence, just until there's one grain of sand left on the earth, and there's not one human left. And he's like, okay, I got every scrap of evidence on this guy that we can get. All right, come to the courtroom, and then what he's going to do is he's going to say, all right, well, now you're going to pay for this, every single freaking grain of sand that he destroyed. And then, because like I said, he's getting revenge. God is getting revenge on Lucifer. Like I said, if Lucifer didn't get into such a big fury and start such a big fight with it, God would have already resolved the issue and he would have already fixed everything. But we're at the point where God is sitting there laughing, making his punishment. Oh yeah, I love this. I'm adding another 20,000 years. Oh, I love it. I'm just going to add me another 20,000 years there for you. Oh yeah. And he's just loving it. He's just loving it. He's just adding 20,000 years here, 20,000 years there, 20,000 years. And God knows what type of 20,000 years. Each 20,000 years may be going through some sort of punishment. And he's loving it. He's just loving being able to punish this guy more and more and more. And he's just going to sit there. And you know what? God is at the point, he doesn't care. He doesn't care. He will punish him infinitely if that is the circumstance that it has to come down to. If that's what his math adds up to, he will do it. If that's what his math adds up to, how would God's math add up like that? The way it would add up like that is if Lucifer refuses to stop. If he doesn't stop and give up and basically resign, then he's going to continue to wage war. So if he continually just tries to wage war and tries to ignore the fact that he's been spotted and, that there's evidence that we know that he's the criminal, if he keeps trying to be in denial, like, oh, you guys don't have any evidence, you guys can't prove that. See, that's where Lucifer is going to potentially get an infinite amount of sentence behind when he gets sent to hell. Because hell, there's going to be all sorts of different versions of hell. I don't know. Maybe there's a hell where you're just literally in a cell that's completely black for 1,000 years. Maybe you're in a cell that's like a sauna that's 200 degrees for 1,000 years. You never know because God can do anything He wants. He can. It just depends on what the math, what His math dictates is going to set somebody straight and help fix them from being harmful and making wrong decisions. So if he feels like, hey, locking this guy in a sauna that's 200 degrees for 1,000 years is going to set him straight, then he might do that. But we don't know. We don't know the magnitude because we're not God. We don't know what type of punishment. But one thing is for sure: He will make it fair. He will make it equal to what somebody deserves or owes. So anyway, Lucifer can resolve his debt or reach a point to where God would be like, okay, there's nothing, no other additional charges to be added on here. Because if there's nothing else that he keeps doing, then there's nothing else to charge him with. So that's the problem, is if he continually keeps getting charged and charged and charged until it never ends, or is expected to never end, which is the problem with those other altered universes, is that they never ended because he continually kept getting more charges, and God doesn't want that to be a reality to where he has to infinitely punish somebody. But if he has to, he will. If it does come to the circumstance of that, if that's what the reality is, then that's what the reality is. So it all comes down to the circumstance. I mean, everyone has their own opinion and idea what they think that Lucifer would be willing to get in trouble with. In my personal opinion, I don't think he's going to be willing to go the full infinite of continually wanting to keep waging war, because it's getting your ass beat. You get your ass beat enough, you're just going to give up. You're going to stop. You're going to say, oh man, I don't want this. I'm not getting in any more trouble. I'm done. I give up. And that's what the point of this is to where God is sitting there waiting like, okay, are you ready to give up yet? Are you ready to give up? Because if you keep going, I'm going to go infinite. And that's how he is. If he has a reason, if there's evidence, if that's what's real, he will punish you for your wrongdoings if it's real, if that's what has happened. So if Lucifer keeps going, keeps going, keeps going. So if he doesn't finally learn that, hey, in those other altered realities that he would have potentially got infinitely punished, if he doesn't accept that, then he could potentially be going down that same pathway, the only pathway. It could be the only pathway for us to know, like, hey, well, somebody has to be punished. End of story. Whether it's one person or everybody, it depends on who it was and who did what. And that's where it comes down to Lucifer. It's like, okay, well, someone has to pay for this. Someone's going to get punished. And now God is looking at him like, okay, well, if you don't believe that I will potentially infinitely punish you if I have to, if it's going to set your shit straight, well, then I will do it. And now Lucifer, this is his last chance of where he gets to decide, well, do I want to just keep getting in trouble and then potentially get in trouble for infinite amounts of duration? Because that's where the creator is looking at him like, all right, well, that's just another 20,000, 20,000, 20,000. And it's going to get more and more, 100,000, 100,000. And then if he ever gets to the point where it's like, well, I'm at times infinite, he can mark it times infinite. At any point he wants to, he can just say, hey, this is times infinite. And how is something times infinite? If it's continuous. That's how he. That's how you mark something infinite, is if it's continuous or ongoing. So as long as the creator doesn't mark, hey, this is ongoing, continuous till the very end, till he never would have stopped, like a sore loser. Oh, he never stopped until he got his brains blown out, till it was all over. That's the problem. If he doesn't stop until his brain's blown out, until it's all over, until there's nothing else that can change, then he will be punished to the full extent. So that's why Lucifer comes into revelation and revealance to the world, is because he's got to give up. He's got to make it known, like, hey, you know what? I made mistakes. I'm getting in trouble for this shit. I got to make sure everybody knows, because if I keep going with, pretending like this isn't happening and that I'm not gonna get in trouble, then I am fucked. And he knows that now. And I think he's finally, that's why the whole myth is out there, and it was for somebody to find out and finally realize and connect the dots, because he was hoping to God, like, oh God, I hope to God somebody figures this out, because he probably thinks like, oh, I am so fucked, because he knows how pissed off that he got the creator. He's like, oh my God. And he knows that the creator's a nice guy, and he doesn't mean any harm to anybody if there isn't a useful reason. So Lucifer just wanted to test, like, well, if there's a reason to hurt me, would he hurt me? So he was just out of science. It was like a science experiment. It's just like basically going up to somebody, punching them in the face like 20 times, just knowing that they can, and just seeing what would happen or what they would do. So Lucifer knew, like, oh, this guy, he supposedly I can just punch him and punch him and punch him, and he won't do anything, and it won't affect him. So Lucifer basically just went up to him, punched him, just to see what would happen. And now we're seeing exactly what happens. Well, if you go punch him, dude, he's gonna beat your ass, and he's gonna beat your ass so badly. Oh my God! And that's what happens. If you fuck around and you try to fight him, he will beat your fucking ass. It's not a joke. Lucifer thought it was a fucking joke, and he got his goddamn ass beat. He got his ass fucking beat so badly, unbelievably badly, because he figured that, oh, God's mercy is infinite. Yeah, his mercy is infinite, but it doesn't mean that you won't be tried for your actions. It doesn't mean you won't be punished. That's what forgiveness is. Oh, yeah, I forgive you, but most of the time, if somebody forgives you, it's only if you do something in exchange or in return. So that's how God works. It's like, oh yeah, you can always get my forgiveness, but you would have to earn your respect back, and you would have to do certain things for him to forgive you. So yeah, he can and will forgive anyone and everyone, but only if there's motivation or if there's a reason. Well, is there a reason why I should forgive you? So that's where Lucifer gets the offering. That's what Judgment Day is. It's like, okay, well, Lucifer, if you want forgiveness, this is your judgment. You will be sentenced unto this as your judgment, and under this judgment and sentence, then you shall be forgiven. See, that's how he operates. Yeah, anybody can be forgiven, but only under certain circumstances, only after you've accomplished your debt or what you owe. So he'll sentence you and say, hey, this is right, judge. If you want forgiveness, you pay back this, or you do this, and then all will be forgiven. Because that's how forgiven. Most time, if somebody is forgiven over something, it's something small. So that's why it's easily forgivable. Oh yeah, I forgive you, because it's something that you're satisfied to basically pay back. Because when you forgive somebody, you're paying back respect. Oh, okay, I can respect you again. So most of the time, when somebody is being forgiven, they're just being paid back something real small, or, oh, I can forgive that, no big deal, I can respect that. So it's a different thing when you come down to a bigger punishment of you're a killer or whatever it may be, a fucking rapist or child molester or something. Then he's gonna say, okay, well, I judge you like this, and I sentence you to that, and under this sentence and under this judgment, only then shall you be forgiven. That's how he works. Only then shall you be forgiven until you complete your sentence and your judgment, because your sentence is based off what your judgment is. So when he sentences you based off your judgment, that's the only way to get your forgiveness. So he is all merciful and all forgiving, but if you want forgiveness, there will have to be judgment and a sentence for your judgment, because then he can respect you again. Until you pay back what you're judged and you're sentenced based off of, he will not forgive you or have respect for you. Because that's the point of you getting a judgment and a sentence, is to gain your respect back. It's like, okay, well, you're judged and sentenced to this, and then I will forgive you. Then I can have respect again for you. So most people, that's why everybody has to pay back different levels of respect in order to be forgiven. So that's why with the Creator, some people will have to pay back higher levels of respect in order to be forgiven. And it's going to be based on what he says and sentences. So he will say, well, my judgment, this is what I judge. This is my judgment. This is what I expect. This is my opinion. So his judgment is his opinion. My opinion, that's what he'll say. My opinion is that you are sentenced unto this, and then thou shalt be forgiven. In my opinion, so it's in his own opinion, because that's what it's come down to, because now it's his business. Because when it comes down to being his own business, it's his opinion. That's why he says, my judgment, my opinion, my sentence. This is what I expect. This is what I sentence. This is my opinion. And then I will have forgiven you, or I can respect you. Okay? So he can create a sentence. That's what the Great Day of Judgment is for, is he creates a sentence for everybody that owes. And remember, not everyone's going to have to pay a large sentence if they did something small, all right? Like we're talking, like some people go to jail for a week, some people go to jail for a month, some people go to jail for a year, some people go to jail for 10 years, some people go to jail for life. That's what we're dealing with. He's going to say, well, your sentence is 1 week, or whatever it may be, because God knows what he's going to sentence. God knows what his opinion is, because his opinion is what his opinion is. And he has his own opinion. And nobody knows what his opinion is. You can only guess. You can only guess what his opinion is. You can only guess what his judgment is. You can only guess what his sentence is. He's the only one who knows what his opinion is. So we don't know exactly what he's going to decide on sentencing people for on their crimes. We do know it will be based off magnitude, the bigger and the lesser. Okay, so all I can say is just get ready for the Great Day of Judgment, because he is going to fucking The only way he will forgive anybody, and remember, we're beings of forgiveness. That's the only reason he created everybody, is we're the type of people where we say, hey, please forgive me, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it, I didn't perceive it the way I'm now starting to perceive it, the way I needed to perceive it. Okay, so that is how we are. We want forgiveness. So Lucifer is going to reach a point where he's like, hey, you know what? I want forgiveness. Judge me. Sentence me. I'm guilty. That's what Lucifer is going to, I think, is going to happen. But it could be the opposite. Maybe he won't. He'll go against it. Maybe he'll continue to wage war. Always wage war. Who knows? But it's all a matter of being able to weigh out the probabilities and the math of it. Everything good and everything bad that can come out of it. So remember, the creator knows every single infinite parallel universe that is possible. So whenever you come up with some random parallel universe or idea, remember, God already knew about that parallel universe that you created or came up with before you even created it or came up with it, because it's just a combination on the dice that it could potentially land on. And remember, God knows every single combination that the dice could land on. But the only thing that matters is what combination that the dice is on.